All right, so as we begin, um, for those people who are absent, you download this in-class popularity index and contribution margin and production activity. That will help you later on in class as you watch the recording. All right, so we need get our PowerPoint. Cost control, chapter 4. All right. So for chapter 4, this is actually one of my favorite chapters in the textbook um, because we're going to talk about different methods or different ways we can actually cost out our or determine what our menu selling price is going to be. One way is not the right way for every single thing, but we also are going to do a menu analysis. So we'll be able to determine which items on our menu are the rock stars that are really popular. People love them, but they also bring us a lot of money. They contribute to our profit. And we'll also be able to identify which ones maybe are not the strong performers on our menu. Okay. So once we do that menu analysis today, I'm going to introduce those concepts in class today, and in class on Thursday, we're actually going to do a full menu analysis. Okay. Um, so let's just jump right in and get started. So different things that impact our menu selling price, what we sell our items for. Okay. One of those is the market. What do we mean by the market? When you hear the word market, what do you think?
Place that sells things.
Okay, yeah, you think of like a place that sells things like a farmer's market or like a grocery store, like a market like that. When we talk about the market, we are looking at specifically, when we look at the market, what we're talking about is a specific area. Okay. So in the hospitality vocabulary, in the industry vocabulary, I might say the San Antonio market. So that would be like all restaurants in the San Antonio area. But then I can even break up San Antonio and I can say the downtown market, or I can say the 1604, like SeaWorld market. So I can talk about the different areas. It's basically how we break up. We even have like the US market as a giant country. Then we have the Southeast, the Southwest. We have the Northwest, the Northeast. So those are different markets, right? So when you hear the word market, it's just basically how we divide larger pieces into smaller different segments. Okay. So market driven pricing, something that impacts the pricing of our ingredient, or sorry, pricing of our menu items. One thing that I think about when I think about market driven pricing, a long time ago, this is, I think, even probably pre-pandemic, right? Pre-pandemic, Pizza Hut came out with a $10 large pizza, and you could put whatever toppings you wanted on it. And if you went to the app and you got above 5 toppings, you get a little error message. It's like, whoa, hold on. Our pizzas are best with 5 or less toppings, right? Because they don't want you to go crazy. That adds to the cost. But they said $10, any large pizza. Okay. So what does that do for market-driven pricing like Papa John's or other pizza places, right? Um, what is like the cheapest pizza around? Little Caesars, right? This the $5 hot and ready, which is no longer $5. They've had to increase their prices slightly, right? But what did that do to the pizza market? What did that do to the competitors like Papa John's, Pizza Hut? When Little Caesars came out with that concept of you can walk right up and you can get a hot and ready pizza. You don't have to come in and make an order and wait for it, right? And so does Pizza Hut and Papa John's have any control over what Little Caesars does? They don't. So the market Sometimes what your competitors are doing influences how you price your stuff, okay? Because if you price a little bit too high, and we go back to this right here, if you price your items a little too high and your guests don't see a relationship between the price that they're paying and the value that they're getting, they're not going to pay that. You can have the most amazing chicken sandwich, right? But if you're charging too much for it and your guests don't see the value compared to the price that they're paying, they're just not going to buy it. Okay. And so sometimes our guest expectations and our guest price value relationship, which is out of our control, we can't control that. That is sometimes some things that will influence what we charge for our items. Demand driven pricing. What do we mean by demand driven pricing? Any thoughts? What does the word demand mean? When you hear the word demand, what do you think of?
People want.
People wanting something, right? Okay. So demand driven pricing, if you think about places where you have a captive audience, okay? So if you want to eat Whataburger while you watch the Spurs lose, okay, you have to get the Whataburger at the AT, or sorry, not AT&T Center, the Frost Bank Center, right? You can't go outside, go to a Whataburger on the street, and bring your Whataburger back in. So if you really want to have that double cheeseburger while you watch the game, you got to pay that price. It's a little bit higher price. Actually, not a little bit, it's usually a lot larger. Same thing with airports. So sporting events, airports, stadiums, those typically have demand-driven pricing, and it's focused more on the captive audience that you got to pay. If you want to eat that, then that's the price you're going to pay. Okay. We also have what's called the markup differentiation. Okay. The markup differentiation, this concept just basically says we can't charge the same markup on every single menu category. Some menu categories have a higher markup, some of them have a much lower markup. And what I mean by that is how much we can charge above what the cost is going to be that it costs us to make it. It's not the same. So let's take two very drastic ingredients or two very drastic things on our menu. What's usually the least expensive thing on our menu that costs us? What category is usually the least expensive for us to produce?
Water?
Okay, so water is a type of beverage. There we go. Okay, so beverages are typically the least expensive for us to produce. Okay, let's say maybe that soda cost me 25 cents. Okay. So that soda costs me 25 cents. So if I want to use the general range of percentages, remember we talked about this back in chapter 1, the generally accepted range of percentages is 30 to 33%. Okay. So if I use 30%, so I divide my cost by 30%. What should I sell my soda for? 25 cents divided by 30%.
83 cents.
83 cents? Okay. How many of you seen a soda on the menu for 83 cents? No? What is it usually? $3? Yeah. If you go to a hotel and you buy a soda, like a bottle of soda in their little gift shop, it's like what, Antonio?
Like $4.
$4 or $5 for a bottle of soda, right? So that's where we're making that larger markup. We get a lot more profit from those things. Now, let's reverse that. And let's talk about steak. I like steaks. Okay? Let's talk about steaks. That steak maybe costs us, I would say probably, let's say it cost us $20. Okay? That steak cost me $20 as a restaurant. Okay? Take that back. Let's make it $40. We're at a high-end restaurant. Right? So that steak costs $40. If I apply that same concept of 0.30, what is my suggested selling price?
$133.
$133. Okay. So we'll say $133. Where's that price value relationship? Do you think our guests are going to be paying $133 for just one steak? Okay. And so you see the difference between the steak and the soda. If we actually charge our selling price of $3, or let's say, yeah, $3, and it costs me 25 cents to make it. What is 25 cents divided by 3? What is that percentage? You guys can use your calculators. 25.25 divided by 3. Abraham, what'd you get? 12? We all agree?
Did you do 25?
12%?
8.3%.
8.3%. Does that sound? Okay. So 8.3% is my beverage cost percent. Let's apply that to our steak. If our steak costs me $40 and I divide by 0.083, what is my suggested selling price if I wanted to use this exact same percentage for my beverages as I do for my steaks? What'd you get, Daniel? So $40 divided by 0.083. Go, Jasmine, go ahead. Sorry? 481? All right. $481. How many of your guests do you think you're going to be spending $481 on one steak? Okay, so the purpose of going back and forth between sodas and steaks is just to demonstrate that different items have different percentages. Okay, typically the larger the cost of the ingredient, the larger the percentage is going to be. The lower the cost, that lower percentage is going to be. Okay. So we have 4 different methods that we're going to use to cost out our ingredients. The first one we've already talked about in class. The first one is the triangle. Oops. Take this. Makes a difference. So the first one is our triangle. Where am I? Let me sit down. Which is also called the food cost percentage method. So that's the first one, which we've already talked about, so we're not really going to go into that too much. We've practiced that with the triangle. Okay, so the first method is the food cost percentage method. The second method is called the factor method. Okay, we do the factor method. How we figure out our factor method is we are going to take 100% and divide by the ideal food cost percentage. Okay. We're going to take 100, we're going to divide by the ideal food cost percentage. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So let's look at our first food cost percentage, 25%. If we take 100 and divide by 25, what's my answer? 4. So my factor is 4. So I'm going to take $2.50 times 4 is going to give me $10. Okay. Can we put it into our triangle? Absolutely, we sure can. 25% selling price and cost of $2.50. If you put this in our calculator and you do the math, it will give you $10. Okay. But which one's easier? 250 times 4 or 250 divided by 0.25? The times 4 is a little bit easier, right? So this factor method allows you to do things a little bit more quickly. Okay. Sometimes you might hear chefs say, take the cost of your ingredients and multiply by 3. Okay. So if we do that, that's basically using a factor of 3. If we take 100 and divide by 33.3%, what is our factor? 3. And so essentially what they're saying is, as a chef, if you want to get an average 33% food cost, just multiply your cost by 3. And that will automatically give you that 33.3% food cost. And you're within that range of 30 to 33%. Okay. So let's do the other ones. Let me erase some of this to get this out of the way. All right. So if we want a 30% food cost, here's our 30%. We're going to multiply by 3.33. That's my factor. Okay. So if I multiply 3 times 3.33, what do I get? What's 3 times 3?
9.
9. So $9.99. Okay. If my factor is 4, my food cost percentage is 40. My factor is 2.5. So if I multiply by 2.5, what is my answer? It's 30 something.
38.125.
38.13. Okay. And then the last one, 10%. So what is 100% divided by 10?
10.
10. So we're going to multiply by 10 and we get $1.50. Okay. So if you ever find a problem that says using the factor method, what is the selling price for an item with a 40% food cost? You're going to take 100 divide by 40. Your factor is 250. So you'll multiply that by the food cost. Okay, that's the factor method. The factor method works really well when it's a nice even number. Okay. Look at this 34%. Who wants to multiply 2.94 in your head times whatever the menu item costs? That's kind of more challenging, right? So in that case, I would just use my triangle. It's going to give you the same answer. I would just use the triangle. The third method is our contribution margin method. What is the root word of contribution?
Contribute.
Contribute. Okay. So that contribution margin, that number contributes, this is how I remember it, it contributes to our profit and our non-food costs. So things like insurance, rent, salary, wages, all that stuff, right? So that's the contribution margin. The way that we use this method is we take the non-food costs and we add our ideal profit. Okay. Then we're going to divide by the number of anticipated guests. So if we use our formula right here, what is 5,000 plus 3,000? 8,000. That is our contribution, right? And then we divide by our 2,000 guests. And we get what? $4. So $4 is going to be added to every single menu item. Just a flat $4, because that flat $4 is going to cover all of our non-food costs, right? And our profit. And then these are our food costs. So we have non-food and profit, and we have food costs. So when we do that, $6.50, $7, $19.25, and $4.15. Okay. So looking at these numbers compared to these numbers, which two are the most drastic? 1, 2, 3, 4. Which ones are the most drastic? Take a look at these selling prices. So look right here at the menu price. And now let's look back at this one. Which two are the most drastic, the most different? Number 3 and 3 and 4. $38 and $1.50 compared to $19 and $4.15. It's the most drastic. Okay. What is a problem that you might see here with the contribution margin? Any thoughts?
You get a static profit.
So we get that static contribution margin, right? But that number, this $4 is based on what? Having 2,000 guests. Can we guarantee we're going to have 2,000 guests? So what happens when we only have 1,000 guests? That's $8. But are we just going to go in and just change our menu pricing? No. Okay. So the reason why we talk about the different methods for pricing out your menu items is because there's not a one size fits all. You have to decide what method is going to work the best, right? This $4.15 may not be good enough. That may be too expensive for sodas, right? This $1.50 might be a little bit more reasonable in cost. But if everybody else around you is charging $3, $4 for their sodas, then maybe you can get away with bringing that price up. Okay. Just because the math says that you're going to charge $1.50 based on a 10% food cost or beverage cost doesn't mean you have to. You can look at the market and you can see what the people are willing to afford and pay. All right. Last one is our Q factor. So short and sweet, Q factor just basically means all of the ingredients that come with your menu item. It's all the stuff that is complimentary or all the stuff that's free. And I put free in quotations. Why do I put free in quotations?
Because we get it, but the customer gets
Yeah.
it no matter what.
Well, nothing's really free. All right. If we go and sit down at a Mexican restaurant in San Antonio, what do you expect? Chips and salsa and maybe even tortillas. Okay, some chile, maybe some chili con queso or whatever, right? We expect that. But that's free? I'm not paying for it. Would you go back to a place that charges you for chips and salsa? right? In reality, they are charging you. So if that chips and salsa, let's say that chips and salsa is $1 per person, okay? You just add $1 to all your entrees. So when you order an entree, that extra dollar is covering the cost of that chips and salsa. Okay. So you're paying for it in some way. It's just not listed out as a menu item. And so this Q factor allows us. So for example, in this case, we're talking about barbecue. So the barbecue, basically the protein is different. The protein is unique, but with your barbecue plate, you also get bread, starch, vegetable, salad dressing, butter for your bread, and the condiments like what is it? Jalapenos, onions, pickles, all that kind of stuff, right? That comes with your barbecue. And that's what's called the Q factor. So we can just add that all up. And then that way, when I'm pricing things out, if the only thing that's changing is our protein. So we might have a price. This is our menu cost for our brisket plate. But maybe we'll have a different menu cost for ribs, for sausage, for smoked turkey, right? The protein changes, but everything else stays the same as far as what you get with that meal. Okay. I think about Little Red Barn Steakhouse. Anybody ever been to Little Red Barn Steakhouse? Right? Isn't it over off? You know what I'm talking about, Little Red Barn? Yeah. So it's over here off of like I-10 and can't remember the name of the street. But as soon as you sit down, they bring you the salad. Right? You don't have to ask for it. It's just part of the meal. Oh, Hackberry and Rigsby, yes. Um, yeah, I love Little Red Barn. They've got some good stuff. But the salad comes included, and the rolls come, right? You don't even have to ask for them. So all the cost of that is built into the cost of your entree. When you purchase an entree, you should be, if you're smart about costing things out, you should do that. Okay. This is also really helpful if you're in catering, right? If you're serving a lot of people in a catering situation where everyone's getting the same amount of stuff, then this is just one flat price that you're going to be charging for everybody. All right. So on your notes page, I know those of you who have this worksheet, we have it here on the bottom, but I want you to draw it somewhere else on your notes page, on a blank piece of paper or something. I would like you to draw this square, okay? Include everything that's in the green outline, all the text and everything. So go ahead and draw that square. Draw it pretty big, maybe about half a page size. Include all the text inside the squares and all the text outside the squares. If you need some paper, I've got some scratch paper up here. You're welcome to come get some. Okay, so go ahead and draw this pretty big. This is a diagram that allows us to put two different criteria. Oh, yeah. There's one right here. This is a diagram that allows you to take two different criteria. In this case, it's popularity and contribution margin, and combine them to get four different categories. I'm going to pause the recording for a moment.